Hi guys. So what we're going to be talking about today is we're going to be doing, I'm going to share with you something called the circle of function. So what the circle of function is it's a tool that myself and Sam use both with our clients day-to-day in the clinic and also with our online clients. The purpose of the circle of function is to give you guys a better understanding of how to manage what you're doing day-to-day to make sure you're not doing too much, but also to make sure that you're not doing too little. We're trying to find that middle part where you can grow your capacity. So if you're in pain now, we want to be able to understand where our top level is before you then, what's the most you can do before you get pain, and working at that level is something that will allow your capacity to grow and for your recovery to take shape over the long term. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to share my screen with you now. So you guys should be able to see this. Okay, so this is the circle of function. So the circle of function, everything inside here are things that we can do before pain and injury. Things outside the orange line on the outside of the circle are things that we can't do. Now, the circle of function has layers. So right in the middle here, these are things that you can do day to day. You can even do those when you've got pain. You're not really challenged by those at all. So I've got making a cup of coffee here. For you guys, it might be like brushing your teeth or something. So we all have slightly different circles. As we come out, things get a little bit more challenging. So here, standing still for 5 minutes. Sometimes people report to us that when they're standing for any length of time, they can sometimes get back pain. So that might not be inside that for them, but for me, that's inside my circle. And again, I can sit and I can ride a bike. Some people can't do that because when you're riding a bike, your back's in that flexed forwards position. But for me, that's okay. As we come further out, things that challenge you a little bit more, putting on your socks, the back pain recovery workouts and any kind of back pain recovery movements. So things that are really testing your spine are on the outer part of the circle. Things that are then on the outside. So these are things we can't do. So sudden movements. I saw somebody the other day mention that they'd taken their dog for a walk and the dog had suddenly pulled and it jarred their back on their left-hand side and they had some back pain afterwards. So that sudden movement is not something that they can tolerate. Walking, standing for a really long time, again, that's a common thing that we see with patients who are experiencing back pain. And again, with driving the car, people have to do a lot of miles in their car. They can often struggle to do that without experiencing some level of discomfort. So again, this circle is different for everybody. You might have driving in your car for a long period. You might actually be in the middle section here. That might be quite easy for you. For me, I can do 3 or 4 hours in the car without too much of a problem. But again, yeah, it's slightly different for everyone. So it's easy in the middle and getting progressively more difficult as we come out before we then are pushing our bodies too hard in certain things and we go outside the circle and they can aggravate some pain. If we go really far out of the circle, then they may well cause an injury. The thing to bear in mind is that it can be really innocuous. So people can actually, walk and whatever for a really long time. I've had this in patients. That doesn't challenge them loads, but it's up at the upper end of their capacity. But maybe putting on their socks is on the outside. Now, going for a long walk is definitely more stressful on your body, on your spine, than putting your socks on. But it's just specific things that your body doesn't want you to do at that time. So you end up with a bit of a mismatch there. Now, so if you have that, don't be concerned. That is quite normal. The outer part of this circle is zoomed in here. So we call this the Goldilocks zone. So we all know about Goldilocks and the 3 bears. She didn't like, some porridge was too salty, some porridge was too sweet, some was just right. We use the Goldilocks zone to describe that top level of rehab that you can do. So if you're spending too much time towards the middle of the circle, you're not challenging your body enough. If you're working your body too hard, you're going to be out here aggravating your pain and you're also not going to recover. This bit out here, where we're challenging our body enough to allow a progression, but not so much that we aggravate pain, is the bit that is just right. So in this circle, again, it's just around the edge here. That is where the ideal level of rehab is for everybody. So when we exceed the circle, so we're going to talk about aggravating your pain first. So sometimes people come outside of the circle of function. So that can happen for different reasons. Either we've done too much, or actually the circle's gotten smaller. So we'll talk about doing too much first. You can do too much in one go, or you can do too much progressively. So sometimes, you know, if you think about the amount of work you're doing, you might step out of the circle and then come back in really quickly. So actually you maybe get a bit of soreness, bit of stiffness, but you're not having a proper flare up. What people do sometimes is they work on the outside in the Goldilocks zone, but so close to the edge, and then they just start working outside it, just outside it, and that's where they cause a flare up. So it's like a progressively kind of increasing workload on your body. The other way of doing it is to do something that's just way beyond it in one go. So I've had patients who've tried to, they've been moving house and they've lifted a sofa to try and move it, and they've gone bang, you know, in one go, they've come right out here outside the circle and aggravated their back a lot. And they hadn't had any issues up until that point. They've been very, very fit and very, very active. The other way of flaring your back up, so exceeding the circle, is actually if the circle gets smaller. So we lose some of these layers. Now, why would that happen? Well, the circle shrinks when we put certain stresses on the body. So one big stress would be sleep. Okay, so we know that when you're not getting enough quality or quantity of sleep, you're putting extra stress on your body, and therefore your body can handle less before you have these flare-ups. You might also be actually just not moving enough. So because you're not working out here, out in the Goldilocks zone, your Goldilocks zone moves from being here to being down here. You know, you're just not challenging it enough. That is the reason that we say that bed rest is a really, really bad thing when you have a flare up with back pain. Because when you have a flare up, the circle shrinks, but then by shrinking your activity level right down to here, just doing basic tasks after that can be really difficult, and it prolongs your recovery because you then have to get your body used to doing all of these layers again. Whereas if you flared up and just lost, say, this outer layer, but you could still do stuff inside, you've still maintained a good level of mobility, and therefore you're only trying to gain one layer back, so your recovery is faster. You might also have other stresses and strains on the body that keep your circle small, like you could be smoking or drinking too much alcohol. Alcohol actually as well will interrupt your sleep. So having alcohol close to bedtime stops your body going into that fully rested state that you need. So rest and sedation are different things. Avoiding alcohol before bedtime is a good thing if you want to try and keep your circle large by getting good quality sleep, particularly if you've been experiencing long-term back pain. You might also just be suffering from a little bit of stress. When I ask patients about this, they tend to say, oh, no, I'm not really stressed. But it's not that kind of stress that you're thinking about, in that, you know, you sort of sit down and think, I can't cope with this. It's when your brain is just going round and round constantly. You just don't get that time off. You don't get that recreation time. It's just, you know, every day is a bit of a slog. And you're not giving yourself enough time. So that then brings your circle down and makes it smaller. So really the aim of the circle of function is to allow you guys to get an idea of how we challenge the body, how we layer everything up. And your aim throughout every single day is to do stuff within every single layer. You know, you've got to apply a healthy challenge to your body, but we've also got to make sure that we're doing all these other things. Because if you're spending huge amounts of time right at the edge, you're just constantly smashing your body, challenging it all the time. It's not getting enough respite. Whereas if you occasionally you just take a really easy day, you're giving your body its time off that it needs, so that when you then come back out to the edge, out towards your Goldilocks zone, your body can cope with it. What you find over time is that the circle progressively increases. So this is why we're very, very critical of sort of the traditional rehabilitation programs that people are given, where they're given a sheet of exercises. Because if you've, for example, say your circle shrunk right down here, you've been struggling with long-term back pain, you then get given a sheet of exercises, that might help a bit, and it might push you a little bit further out. But it's probably not going to take you further out, because that sheet of exercises needs to be changed and progressed and made more difficult, and be made more relevant to you as your body recovers, so you can then start challenging at your new top end. Again, when people come to me right in the middle of a flare up, I say, you know, today go for a short walk, maybe just a couple of minutes. So for them, that's going to be a challenge. They can only do a small amount, but I say, if you feel a little bit better tomorrow, let's go for 3 minutes, and the next day 4 minutes. And what we're doing is we're layering up things on the circle of function. The overall objective is to get as many things inside the circle as possible and make your circle as big as possible. Now, you mustn't, having said that, you mustn't punish yourself if your circle does occasionally get smaller. So I mentioned recently that I've torn my hamstring, and when I look back at it, the time when I tore it, I was over exercising. I had just had really, really poor quality sleep the weekend before. I'd had quite a bit of stress as well. So my circle had decreased, and sometimes those things happen, and it's just how life goes. But by maintaining a good average of what we're doing and knowing about the circle of function, respecting all of these layers, we can get our circle to stay as big as possible for as much of the time as possible. So, all right, I hope you guys like that. I hope that made sense. If you guys have got any specific questions you want to ask me, something relating to yourselves, then stick it in a comment below, let me know, and I'll try and answer that for you and get an answer to you as quickly as possible. Thanks for listening, and I will see you guys next time.